If everyone could take their seats, please. The chair will call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Education, CUSD 201, today, Tuesday, November 5th, 2013. Roll call, please, Mrs. McMahon.
Mr. Armstrong?
Here.
Ms. Caparelli?
Here.
Mrs. Charlton?
Here.
Mrs. Hancock?
Here.
Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mrs. Knopbush?
Here.
Mr. Price?
Here.
We could stand for a pledge of allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda is public comment. Are there any comments? Okay, then we'll go right to the consent agenda. Any questions? Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Number 1, personnel recommendations. 2, renewal of medical, dental, life, and long-term disability insurance plans. 3, approval of school maintenance project grant. And 4, approval of swim club facility use agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please, Mrs. McMahon.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mrs. Knopbush?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hancock?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Ms. Caparelli?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Okay, then we'll move into discussion. 2013 school report cards and adequate yearly progress.
Last week, the state of Illinois released the public school report cards, and so typically at this time of year, then we give a summary to the board and let them know the status of all of our schools within the district. Quick summary, Manning and Westmont High School made adequate yearly progress, and that's due in part to decreasing the number of students who did not meet the standards, and so by reducing that number, we were able to make adequate yearly progress. Miller and Westmont Junior High did not make adequate yearly progress, but as you're aware, there are several initiatives that we have in the district right now that we think we're going to be able to see that same improvement in our other schools as well. Of the students who took the test at the elementary level, only 58.8% of the students met or exceeded state standards, and at the high school level, 51.9%. The high school making adequate yearly progress, there were, and this is, in 2012, there were only 11, and we haven't seen yet the number for the most recent year, but definitely the high school making adequate yearly progress. There are only literally a handful of high schools that can claim that. And then overall, in the state of Illinois this past year, only 16% of all schools made AYP. And so again, we're in pretty good company when we have some of our schools making adequate yearly progress. And then again, the state of Illinois is trying to receive a waiver so that they can look at growth versus meeting exceeding state standards. When we look at our demographics have remained pretty much the same over last year. When you look at the ethnic background, and then also our demographic data, and then I also have the state average for those various categories. But again, we've been pretty stable in that area. When we look at the class of 2013, our most recent graduating class, 42% of our students are attending a 4-year college or university, and 48% are attending a 2-year college. And then we have 3% who are entering the workforce, 2% military, 2% attending tech school, and 3% were undecided at the time. When we look at the financial picture for our district, as reported on report card, this identifies our revenue stream, and that large section in blue represents our property tax revenue, and that accounts for 81.6% of our budget. And so we're very reliant on our local property owners to provide the funding for our schools, and we're very appreciative of that. We also receive 5.2% in federal, and then state resources receive about 7.9%. On the expenditure side, again, the large blue area, which accounts for 75.8% of our budget is education costs, salaries, benefits, those types of areas, as well as some supplies and capital outlay. But overall, I would argue that everything we do that's connected to our spending is related to educating students. So everything that we do in our district with regards to transportation, maintaining our buildings, capital improvements, all that is geared towards educating our students. But again, definitely the largest percentage of our budget goes towards the education of our students. When we start looking at the ISAT data, and you'll notice that our graph has changed over previous years, and that's because the state of Illinois changed the cut scores. And so it's difficult now to have that longitudinal data. And so what they did do to kind of help school districts benchmark where they were compared to last year, they took the 2011, 2012 results and they did adjust those. And so if you go back to last year's report card data, you'll know the percentages may be a little different, but that's because they applied new cut scores. So when we look at Manning, we had a slight increase in our reading, and that's if you use the new cut scores for last year and this year. And then math, we also had a slight increase, and then a slight increase in overall. And then when you look at how we compare to the state average, we're well above the state average. When we take a look at Miller, again, we're seeing increases in reading. Over last year, we had an increase in our math scores over last year. And then again, overall, we have seen an increase. And then again, we're well above the state average. The junior high, we did take a slight decrease in reading, a slight decrease in math, and a slight decrease overall. But again, we're still well above the state average. The high school, because they didn't change anything with the high school. And if you remember, previous years, there's always a huge discrepancy between how students were achieving at the K through 8 level and how they're achieving at the high school level. And so that's one of the reasons why the state adjusted the scores at the elementary level to kind of start to bring those in line a little bit so you didn't have that huge discrepancy. Last year in 2012, we did take a dip with our Prairie State scores, but we did see improvement in reading and math over last year in about the 60-61% range, meeting exceeding state standards. So it was nice to see that bump with some of the interventions that we had in place for last year. When you take a look at the ACT, the drop-off for 2013, and if you remember, we had this discussion last year, that the ACT score is reflecting the most recent graduating class. And so when we go back to our Prairie State scores, that 2013 ACT is embedded in the 2012 Prairie State. And so when we had the dip in our Prairie State scores, that's reflected in the dip in our ACT score. Because we saw it bounce up last year with our junior class, who was our current seniors, we're anticipating that our ACT score will bounce up as well. And if you remember, Jack Baldwin coming to the board with some thoughts and ideas of things that could be done with the juniors to help improve performance on ACT and Prairie State. And so that's why we saw that increase with the Prairie State achievement scores, and then again, we should see the ACT bounce back up as well. When you compare ourselves to other schools in the state, and this is based upon the Chicago Sun-Times rankings, Manning falls in the top 11% of the state for elementary schools, Miller in the top 28% for elementary schools, our junior high top 27% in the state, and our high school in the top 27% in the state. The other thing that's new for our report card, and if you notice that the format of our report card has changed, is the new Illinois 5 Essentials Survey. And last year it was given to staff and students. We haven't heard officially. Originally, the discussion was that this year parents would be included in that. There's actually been some discussion at the state level of maybe not even doing the survey this year. We don't know yet, or if we'll be surveying all 3 areas. But there's 5 areas that the survey measures: ambitious instruction, effective leaders, collaborative teachers, involved families, and supportive environment. And basically, this is based upon school research by the University of Chicago, and if in all those factors, if things are working well within your district, then your district should be poised for school improvement and seeing student growth. And so that's how we're trying to measure whether or not all the programs and structures are in place in order for that to happen. This is a graphic, and this summarizes the district, and then each of the buildings has survey results. But, you know, as you can see, 3 of the 5 areas we're in really good shape. We're in the green area. And then the yellow represents neutral, so that's an opportunity for us to focus on those areas, see some growth, so that we move up in those areas as well. It's kind of interesting. There was some problems with the initial survey results that the state shared, and districts were questioning the validity of some of the results. And so because of that, I think if you notice on the school report card, they don't show you the color code for that school, and that's because there were some questions and some concerns about that. But on the State Board of Ed website, there is a link that you can then get into the survey and take a look at the actual survey data for each of the schools. In terms of our next step, because we want to continue to see the growth that we're seeing at the high school, and then also start to see the improvement in other buildings. One of our goals, again, with the state and moving towards a growth model, if we can reduce the number of students who are not meeting state standards by approximately 10%, that's one of the areas that the state is looking at for making AYP. As a district, we have adopted a no excuses mindset when it comes to working with our students, that we're going to do everything that we can in order for our students to be successful. Our Curriculum Advisory Committee has been working on setting the timelines for the curriculum maps. Last year it was the exit outcomes, this year's curriculum maps. And so they're leading that charge to make sure that we stay on top of those things. We're working on our achievement gaps. We've implemented the PLCs. We're focused on high-level student engagement, higher-level thinking skills, and critical skills. The high school, as we know, has added additional support for ACT and Prairie State, and the focus on formative assessment and then the increased rigor. At the junior high, increased literacy support is something that we added for this year, the focus on literacy, and then the new schedule is helping to build in additional time and practice for those students who need it, and then the focus on the Common Core. And at the elementary level, we're really stressing the building-wide focus on literacy, reading and writing. And if you remember, we're working with Christy Moore, who's helping us. Last year, her presentation was how to transform your school in 180 days, and that's the approach that we're taking with our balanced literacy. And so I think we're definitely going to see significant improvement on the standardized tests as we move forward. And then again, with the focus on the Common Core. And that's kind of a quick summary of our performance on the ISAT in the Prairie State. But again, I think we have a lot of different structures and programs in place to see us continue to improve. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple questions.
Sure.
On one of the more detailed pieces of information that you provided us was all that information on the 5 essentials and the questions and how they were answered. Have you taken any of that information, and is it, I mean, how much is it usable, and how much of it is something the state did that's kind of innocuous?
You know, I think definitely there's some areas that are good to generate discussion and ask follow-up questions. Part of it is, and I'll give you an example of some of the concerns that districts had with the 5 essentials. In my book, when you look at strongly agree and agree, to me, that's good. And but the state, when they took a look at that, they really did distinguish between what % of the staff said strongly agree versus agree. And so you could end up in that neutral band, because even though maybe you had 90% of your staff agree, but you didn't quite have enough in the strongly agree. So there's that follow-up to take a look at those percentages and see where there are. And then I think there are some questions for the staff as well, you know, and seeing why they responded, because some of the questions that are asked of the staff are about, you know, peer-to-peer, you know, how do you feel about staff members, and how do you feel about students, and those types of things.
Do we know how many respondents there were? I kind of went through it again, but I didn't see it. Maybe I missed it.
You know, I can get that for you, but we had, you need 50% of your staff, so we definitely got more than 50%.
Students?
And same thing for students, you had to have 50% of your students. But I can get that data to the board and let you know.
I think as adults, we do a lot of surveys. We're all used to answering surveys in the workplace related to education. I thought it was interesting that they surveyed students and just kind of wondering if we as adults are really looking at those results and kind of acknowledging what's coming from their perspective too, because I don't think we do that very often.
Right, and that's because we're just receiving that data, that's the process we're going through right now.
Okay.
But we will be looking at that data and using it.
Okay. My next question is related to the performance results. So we have one building, manning in the top 11% statewide, and then the other 3 buildings that are more than double that as far as their ranking. And I know that John Jonak has been here a number of times and given us a lot of very in-depth information about what's changing at the junior high. And Jack Balderman, earlier in the year, has done the same thing related to the high school and his efforts. We had a Celebrate Success from Miller last meeting, but that didn't really speak to these things.
Right.
It spoke to a lot of the really neat things that some teachers are doing, and it may be this class or maybe student counselor. But I think that given the results, we probably have some information from 2 of the 3 buildings, and maybe we don't have quite as much from the third, but
Sure.
personally, I'd like to see those numbers moving.
Right, oh,
As-
definitely.
I'm happy to see some of the things that are positive and discouraged to see some of the things that are not. So just, hoping
Sure.
we can move the district as a whole in the right direction.
Right, oh, definitely. And if you remember, the board did ask for, and we had the junior high come and talk a little bit about some of the changes that they've been implementing. The high school is going to be coming, the elementary schools will come as well. But to kind of let you know, when I talk about balanced literacy, what does that look like in their classrooms? What are they doing differently this year as compared to previous years? Same thing with the Common Core. So the plan is to bring each grade level, Manning and Miller may do it together, but each grade level forward to the board so that you can hear what those improvement plans are.
Okay.
Sure.
Kevin, I looked around on the state website for the scores, and I didn't see, and I don't know if I just overlooked it, or the individual subject scores for the ACT. Do you know if they are posting those?
Yes, those are posted with the different subject areas and then the composite. So that 20.2 represents the composite.
Right.
But again, I can get that to the.
All right. I didn't see the English and math, the breakdown. They put it in the context of, I can't remember exactly what. It was a different style of college readiness or something, and they kind of couched it differently.
Right, and I can.
On the new report.
Now that I'm thinking about that new report card, I don't think they get into that level of detail, but I can get that information for the board.
So they gave the districts the old version of the report card, but I'm assuming that's going to be going away.
Right.
So they won't continue to do that. Do you know if they'll be providing districts with any information about how to convert your historical data?
That's one of the questions that we're asking. The state went and did it for
The 1 year.
the 1 year, but then, we have, we always like to look at that, the cohort as they move through our district. Well, that becomes more difficult when they're changing the cut scores. We're also, as you know, transitioning towards the PARC, which is a totally new assessment. And so I think for the next couple of years, that transition, it's going to make it more and more difficult to do that kind of longitudinal study. But we can investigate that a little further and see if there's a way that we might be able to then back into, what those previous years would be.
Okay. And with the ACT composite score, on this graph, it's very stark, to look at. It makes it look like, oh my God, all this progress has just been wiped out. So that each one of these scores represents a different graduating class.
Right.
So when we have this 20.2, is that incorporated? It is incorporated in the PSAE
Right.
calculation for meets and exceeds.
Right.
I guess I just don't understand exactly how that,
The Prairie State is a 2-day exam. The first day is a traditional ACT. And so that's where some of those scores that make up that 20.2 are coming from. And then the second day is the work keys, which is an ACT developed exam, but it's supposed to be geared more towards workplace skills. And so what ends up happening, though, the way though you get to that ACT score, for instance, the class of 2014, they took the Prairie State last spring. Some of our students took the ACT in the last fall. Some of them took it last spring as part of the Prairie State. Some are taking it this fall because they want to improve their score. Some may take it yet again after the first of the year. And so the ACT then, they wait until that graduating class graduates and all those testing opportunities are completed, and then they pull all of your student data together and they typically award you the best score for that particular student. And then they get to that composite. So the score that goes into the Prairie State exam are only the student's ACT score on that testing day.
okay.
Whereas the composite is made up of, you know, your graduating class, all their opportunities to take the ACT.
Okay.
Are you done, Joel?
I guess I have one more question. As far as when we get information about the ACT that is for the graduating class of 2014. So you said getting some feedback on that already or not yet?
You know, we do some of our own testing, you know, with
Internally?
with old ACT, and so we kind of get in a ballpark where students are at, you know, with practice ACTs, but we don't get an official report from the state until after that graduating class is graduated. And typically, you get a preliminary report sometime over the summer,
Okay.
and then it's not until the score report cards come out that you get the final scores.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
I just wanted to follow up on that thought. So if we look at these two charts, the Westmont High School, PSAE, and ACT, I just want to clarify. So the numbers, the 60 and the 61 for reading and math, that's this year's graduating class.
Right, that's class of 2014.
2014. And the ACT composite is for last year's graduating class.
Right,
Okay.
2013.
Okay, good. That kind of was that other way. I had asked you that differently earlier. So then that's why we're seeing that trend is looking like it's changing.
Right.
And again, you know, we've got some really small classes. Like next year's graduating class isn't that one of the really small ones too?
It is.
So therefore, that's one of those situations where 2 or 3 students can throw off the whole thing, right?
Right, you can have that.
Okay, so when we look at, like, you know, we've got this information about the high school that we can track for all these years. And now we're talking about this, you know, I appreciated that question. I was going to ask that, like, historically, how do we look at that? How do we see if there's growth? So when we have the 2 elementary schools, I'm sorry, the 3 schools other than the high school, so those 2011, 2012, those numbers were given to us by the state for comparisons?
Right.
For this year?
Right.
Okay. So then we're going to move into another kind of test. So we don't know when this is going to stop.
Right.
It just kind of,
Changing the goal line a little bit.
yeah,
or-
we keep
Right.
changing the
It makes it difficult
down
to
there.
really.
So, yeah, so then AYP, you know, at some point, everyone's supposed to be 100% AYP. So we know that's never going to happen. So,
2014.
yeah, was that 2015?
14,
Everyone,
this
yeah.
year.
Oh, this year. Oh, excellent. So, you know, obviously, that's not going to happen. So, I guess, and this is only one thing. We do other kind of tests and things like that. I also would like to see some reporting to us as to what are we looking at in our, because again, every single one of these things is one snapshot photo of where we're at. And, you know, again, when the numbers go up, which I'm very happy to see, some of these numbers go up, but then you have to look at what are areas that we can work towards. So I am happy to see. The one thing I did want to say, in following up with something that Shannon said in this 5 essentials report that you had provided for us. Again, data is what it is, and you'd like to see. I'm happy that you did supply that information about the strongly agreed and agreed, because I was reading that and it looked like some of those areas we were getting like the neutral yellow, yet 85% were agree or strongly agreed. But the one thing that did stick out to me, I was happy that they asked the students questions, because some of the things that the students were answering I found very interesting. Like, are the students feeling like they're part of their day, or are they just being taught to? And there was a couple where the students were, strongly agreed that they were part of the process and not just being talked to. So, again, one piece, I did enjoy seeing some of that. So, okay. Thank you. Okay, presentation of fiscal year 2013 audit.
This evening, we have Susan Jones and Colleen DeCracker from Miller Cooper here to talk about the audit.
Good evening. I'm Colleen. I'm going to go through the actual financial statements with you very briefly, and then Susan's kind of going to communicate some items that we as auditors are required to talk to the board about. The financial statements are laid out very similar to last year, so I'll kind of just briefly go through each section. The first tab is the introductory section. It starts out with the transmittal letter. This is written by the district, by the management of the district. It gives primarily history, some goals for the future, kind of a very high-level overview of the accounting and reporting side of the district. In this section is also org chart, and on the very last page is the certificate that the district received from ASBO International for the 2012 CAFR. So again, it was awarded the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting. The next section is the financial section, which is where the statements the statements are contained in this section. The first page is our audit opinion on these statements. This audit opinion is actually really the only thing in this large book that is ours. And the district, once again, did receive an unmodified opinion. There were new auditing standards. The clarity standards were issued this year. Previously, that was referred to as an unqualified opinion. It is also known as a clean opinion, and it is the highest level of assurance that the district can receive on its financial statements. On page 4 is the beginning of the management's discussion and analysis. This is written, again, by management. It gives a higher level, but yet some level of detail as to what happened within the district during its 2013 fiscal year. And if you didn't want to get into the details in the rest of the CAFR, this would be a really good place to read and be able to understand financially what happened with the district during 2013. On page 16 and then 17 is the statement of net position and then the statement of activities. These statement of net position is essentially the balance sheet. Statement of activities is the revenues and expenditures. These two statements are on the full accrual basis of accounting, so that incorporates your long-term assets, primarily your capital assets, and then again your long-term liabilities. What you're probably more used to seeing on a month-to-month basis starts on page 18 and 19. It's again the balance, it's each individual fund of the district, the balance sheet, and then the revenues and expenditures follow that. These are on the modified accrual basis, which are more short-term in nature, so it has your current payables, current assets. On 21 and 22 specifically, you can see the detail of the major sources of revenue and the major, or the groups of expenditures, and then the change in the district's fund balances in each of those funds. From an operational standpoint, these two statements are probably much more meaningful to you than those contained at the beginning. Page 26 starts the notes to the financial statements, and this section is primarily the significant accounting policies and a little bit more description of some of the numbers contained in the financial statements themselves. Page 54 is the required, what we call the required supplementary information. Here you have some pension information, primarily related to IMRF and OPEB, and then you also have the budget to actual schedules for the general fund, and then as you page further back, each individual fund as well. The last section is what we call the statistical section. Again, this is a summary of various schedules. Most of them have about 10 years worth of data in them, primarily property taxes, revenue sources, demographic information, some economic information as well. So I'll let Susan go over the letter to the board, and then you can take any questions if you have those.
Good evening. So this letter includes our required communications for generally accepted auditing standards that we're supposed to be making to the Board of Education, or the governance body over the district. And our responsibilities as your auditors is to express an opinion that the financial statements in all material respects are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And while we plan and execute our audit procedures, we consider the internal controls of the district, all the controls, the processes that take all the transactions and put them into the financial statements, like cash receipts, cash disbursements. And based on that review, we didn't identify any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal controls, or even control deficiencies. But we don't issue a separate opinion on the district's internal control. We issue an opinion on the financial statements. If our financial statements were to be included in an official statement or another document, we would be required to look at that document to make sure there's nothing inconsistent with our audit opinion and our audit report. If you turn to page 2, our plan, scope, and timing was consistent with what we had discussed and written in the engagement letter. Our firm, as well as the engagement team, are compliant with all independent standards and ethical requirements. All significant accounting policies have been disclosed in Note A to the financial statements. There were a couple accounting policies that were adopted, GASB 62 and GASB 63, in the current year by the district. And GASB 63 was the most significant, whereas the statement of net position, which Colleen pointed out in the government-wide statements, last year the name of that statement was the statement of net assets, and this year it's called the statement of net position. So not a material accounting policy that was required. On pages 3 and 4, there's a listing of GASB statements that will be required to be adopted by the district over the next several years. The most significant being is GASB 68 on page 4. And that's where the unfunded pension liabilities, the IMRF liabilities, are going to now have to be recorded in the government-wide statement, in the statement of net position. So that's going to require, management looking at the assumptions, and I think approximately right now you have about between all the pension liabilities, about $3 million. But that'll only impact the government-wide statements on the full accrual basis. In accordance with our audit, and as we execute our audit procedures, we look at all the significant estimation processes used by the district, those being the calculation of accruals, the allowance for doubtful accounts, and we concluded and we tested the assumptions used in those methodologies and found them to be very reasonable. Turning to page 5, All significant disclosures have been made in Note A to the financial statements and throughout the financial statements, and the most significant being those related to self-insurance and the actuarial methods and assumptions that are disclosed as it relates to IMRF and post-employment benefit obligations. We encountered no significant difficulties during the performance of our audit. We received excellent cooperation from the district personnel, so thank you for that. In accordance with these required communications, if we identified any differences that we noted during our audit that were not recorded by management, we would have to identify those to you, and we didn't know of any uncorrected misstatements or errors. And again, if there were errors that we identified that were recorded by management that were material, we would need to disclose that to the Board of Education as well, and there were none. We know of no other consultations with other accountants, and there's no other significant matters that we feel we need to report to you tonight. So thank you very much. If anybody has any questions for Colleen or I, we would be happy to answer them.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Next item on the agenda, maybe have a drum roll, the website presentation. Nancy Pataglia will give us that.
Okay, and there's a copy of this also within Board Docs. So I'm very excited tonight to be able to officially show you the new website that we're going to be launching this week. First, I want to thank the board for your support. Without it, we wouldn't have gotten our project up and going this year, probably. I want to give you just a little history. Our last website update was in January of 2007. It took us 2.5 years to update the website. We started with the district site, and then we went through and did the elementary, and then we did the high school and the junior high. We had a web designer create it, and then we hosted it ourselves, and we used Dreamweaver to keep it going. There were limitations. It looked great when we started out, and after 2.5 years, it still looked great, but by the time we got into 2010, we realized that there were some limitations to it. Things that we've talked about, the images weren't easily changeable on the site. It was pretty complicated to change the images. So we began looking for an alternative in 2011, and we realized that a content management system or a CMS system would probably be our best bet. We initially looked at open source CMS. We were looking at using Drupal, and we realized that that was really time consuming, and we just didn't have the personnel to be creating it on our own. So at that point, we realized that we wanted to look at a third-party content management system. We began reviewing those in December of 2011. We reviewed them again in December of 2012, and the project was approved for this year. So in the spring, we moved forward with the process. This time, we pursued a much more aggressive timeline. So we went from 2.5 years before to 8 weeks from the time of purchase until now. And really, the only way we were able to get that done was using a distributed model of work. If we did not have all of the personnel in our different schools working on the website, we would not have it up to date and as complete as it is now. The content management system, or CMS, what it allows us to do is it's template-based, and it allows us to really assign users to specific portions so that people can work on just their portion of the website. It typically is easier to use. You don't need to have any HTML background or really any web design background to be able to add content to it. It's scalable, so we can grow it as we need to grow. So again, that was one of our limitations before, that if we wanted to add another navigation piece, we couldn't really put that in, or if we wanted to add another section, it was difficult. This is really easy. It's really just a click of a button. And it also allows for greater collaboration. When we initially started looking at content management systems, we developed a criteria list of 28 items. I didn't enter them all here, but I gave you the most important ones. We were looking for ease of use. We wanted it editable through a web interface. We wanted to maintain that idea of blogging that we've been using in the past. We wanted integrated calendars. Being a K-12 district, we know that sometimes we have parents that have kids in an elementary school and they also have kids in the high school, so we want to be able to have them layer those calendars. We wanted to be able to customize each website so that the high school website, while it looked consistent or similar, they could have their own different channels or sections, and same with the elementaries, they could have their own set of colors, their own logo. We wanted to have an intranet, so we had an internal way of having staff communicate, and we wanted to make sure that it had a design for mobile access. We began with 8 vendors that fit relatively to our criteria. We narrowed them down to 3, and then the best fit we chose based on kind of the best fit of the criteria and price. We chose a content management system that is going to be hosted, and we did that for several reasons. One is the guaranteed uptime. It's a 99.7% guaranteed uptime, which means we're going to see our website down very infrequently. We've over the years have had power issues in the district, and we didn't want to see that loss of having the website available, especially in emergency situations. If we have a snowstorm, there may be a power outage, and then we can't communicate via the web. We like the monitoring of their system. They monitor the system. We previously have had attacks on our website, and this just provides that extra level of security. In addition, the data protection and recovery, we don't have to worry about that. And they actually have physical security of their server sites. And then the other piece is that it's a template-based, and they continually update the template. So we like that as well. I laid out the cost a little bit for you, so you can see the year 1 cost of what it's going to be, and that's the hosting and the website. And then the year 2 cost. The reduction we'll see is that we can eliminate some of the third-party systems that we're using now, which is our calendaring system and our blogging subscription. We won't need to ever replace the web server, so that'll go out of service, and that will be a cost that we'll be able to absorb. Also, the hosting portion of it, that is E-ratable. So I listed the hosting price, which is about $7,000 a year. We get about 50% back for E-rate, so we'll recoup about 50% of that. The redesign process. So we started having the building principals look at their websites and talk about what they wanted to see change on their sites. So we began that during the summer and early fall. In September, right after we purchased the new system, we made a choice of which template we wanted to use because it's based on the template. We began in September starting the administrator trainings and the basic site setup. By the end of September, we had started training other people, which were the sub-site directors, which in each building, a sub-site director is one of the building administrators and the technology facilitator. So they're splitting the role. In October, we were really busy. We spent a lot of time training all of the additional editors. So people like all of our administrative assistants who do all the homepage editing, our guidance counselors at the high school who have their own section. Anyone that was involved with a channel or a section was trained. And then we finished up teaching our teachers how to do their own web page sections. So each teacher has a contact page, and that's what we're asking teachers to do at this point, and teachers are able to do more if they want to go on and have a web presence further on the website. We also then in October, we had different focus groups take a look at the design and give us feedback. So we looked at the school board, which we shared with you. I know our finance committee spent some time. We actually had a parent group come in, and they took a good hard look at the website. And then we also asked for teacher feedback. So we got a lot of feedback. I provided some of the ideas. One of the really good ideas that came from the board and the finance committee was the idea of using those global icons, the big icons at the top, to focus on what parents' needs are. So initially I had those mixed with some things for teachers and some things for parents, and we differentiated between those two. The SchoolWire features that we are really happy with, the first one being the responsive web design. That's the idea, that the website will adjust based on what type of device you're using. A lot of times you need to have a separate web app, and we really didn't want to have two different things going. We wanted to have just one site, so this provides for that. It has an e-alert system, which is most similar to our current blogging. That was one of the pieces, one of our criteria, is we wanted to be able to provide that self-sign-up for communications so the parents can receive them. And it was hard to find a content management system that included that. This e-alert system was the most closely resembling what we do with our current blogging. The calendars, I spoke a little bit about those layering of calendars. They offer that ability to do it. And then the opportunity to customize the brands of each school, their navigation bars, to have an intranet, the internal piece, and then having the teacher web pages. So we are going live. We are going live November 7th. You'll see, we'll make the switch over in the morning, and during the course of the day, you'll see that populate as you go in to look at it. So that's everything. Does anyone have any questions about the website?
Nancy, the blogging,
Yes.
so they're not going to be blogging anymore? It's going to be something different?
It will be, we're calling it the e-alerts because that's what it's considered from school wires, but it's the same idea. You'll register and we'll have that information. I've been waiting, I don't want to send out that information before parents can get to the website to register.
So
But they'll be able to register for the district site, the school sites, and then any teacher sites.
So I guess my question is, everybody's going to have to re-register,
Unfortunately-
newly register. So we
unfortunately,
need to make
yes.
sure parents are aware of that.
Yes,
Okay.
and I've started sending blogs out. I think one went out yesterday, and then we're also at the end of every building blog that's going out, we've asked them to include that as well. The big push of information and
Yeah, we should-
instructions will be available Thursday, and then we'll also provide that at parent-teacher conferences on Thursday and Friday.
Okay.
I have two quick questions. First, is it mobile compatible?
It is. With that responsive web design, it allows. So it does resize. It's okay. You do get less, but you can see. Let's see. You can still see what's going on. So the biggest change is when you go onto a smaller screen size, you lose your what they call the channel bar, and it appears up here. So you still get all of your options. They just reduce in size. But what's nice is we don't have to do anything different to it to get it to work.
Okay. Second question, you mentioned that all teachers will have like a contact page. Could you give us a couple of examples with the new format of what beyond that a teacher might be able to have there? What are the system capabilities, or what are some other things that teachers may be able to utilize that new kind of location for?
Sure. So every teacher created a contact page last week. Let me just pull up some ones that I know added a few more things to their page. So the contact page is pretty standard. Teachers were given the opportunity ahead of time to think about what type of biography they'd like to put on their page. Some are longer, some are shorter. Depends on the teacher and how much information they wanted to share. It has their phone and email addresses on it, and in most cases, it has either their school picture or in some cases, no picture. But then they can also add other features. So they can create, I don't know if there's anything on this page, there may not be. That for example, they can create a class page. They can create a course page. They can create a calendar for their courses so that they can put assignments on it. They can put shortcuts or files that the kids may need onto their website. They can have an assignments page. They can have a blog.
So there's quite a bit of functionality behind just the contact page.
Yes, if they, whatever, we want to give teachers the option to use it how they would like to use it. So for some teachers, we showed them what options were available, and some teachers took off and started creating on their own. But in addition, we'll have trainings throughout the year on specific pieces of the web that they can add to their website.
Excellent.
Will individual teacher calendars like this be layerable with the rest of the school calendars?
You can. Yes.
Wow, cool, okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Also, does the transition of the web server to offsite hosting, does that impact email hosting at all? Is that moving also?
No, we are still hosting our own email servers.
Okay. Are there limitations as to what the teachers at individual locations can do? You know, for example, teacher A likes Courier New, and teacher B likes sans serif, and from a branding standpoint, that could be a nightmare. So are they limited sort of on what kind of changes they can make?
On their contact pages, we've asked them to use best practices, so that we've asked them to use a sans serif font, not to use bold, to keep it plain black, to use their school photo. But then on their own teacher pages, we are allowing them
Freedom.
more option to be creative.
Sure, sure.
I have shared with them best practices for web design.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, quick follow-up to that. I know as a parent, and I don't know that you can answer this, but it would be nice if, like, the syllabuses of each of the classes were there, especially when you get into the high school and things like that. So,
I believe, for example, the high school each has departmental pages, and on their departmental pages, I'm pretty sure they have course descriptions, and I believe their plan is to move so that they have each syllabus within the departmental page, so that you can see those.
that would be helpful from a parent perspective.
At the middle school, they're doing team level pages, and so that's probably the location that you would see some of that information as well.
So they'll be able to put like downloadable forms and PDFs and that sort of thing, so you can,
Without a doubt.
okay. Thank you for the pictures of the staff. That's something I've asked for a number of years. I thought it was really important to get pictures of our staff on our website, so you know who you're going to be seeing when you go to a conference and you may have never met an individual teacher before. I think it helps parents to feel more comfortable going into our schools and talking to staff. Thank you.
Thanks for all your work on this, Nancy. This was no small undertaking, I know.
Thank you. Thank you. Like I said, it was work done by all. Jeremy Bautista has done a tremendous amount of work, but really each building has put in a lot of time and effort to make sure that their site's ready to go.
So will you be the overall?
Jeremy and I are the overall site directors, so we can get in and fix anything that needs to be fixed.
And if it, the page, the district page starts getting too busy, or there's junk collecting in, certain areas, you can go in and clean that up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
One of the things that I didn't see on the current site, not to say it wasn't there, but I didn't see it, I had a number of questions, was this the play that was at the high school this past weekend. So less to do with maybe website functionality, more with implementation. Will groups like the club or whatnot that put on the plays, will they have accessibility to be putting up information and stuff like that on their shows?
Of course. They can the building can put information, on each building page, there's a spot for announcements and a spot for news. So that would go in the news section, or maybe go in the announcement section. But then also the fine arts department can create whatever additional pages they want within their fine arts department to add information about it as well.
Wonderful.
So, Nancy, you and I have talked quite a bit about this, and so I thank Gary for bringing this up. So I think we have to say it loud and say it hundreds of times, so we'll say it again. Everybody's going to have to re-sign up for everything. And now,
yes,
the term blog and parent link are going to no longer be used, right?
Blog will we'll still have blogs, but you'll sign up for e-alerts for those blogs.
Right, so those e-alerts. Right.
But Parent Link is something separate. Parent Link is our emergency communication system, so we'll still have Parent Link, and you don't sign up for Parent Link. That we pull from Skyward.
Okay, so it's just because some parents have said they've been confused as to how information comes. So I guess it's just up to us to just keep saying that this e-alert, people are going to have to go sign up for that so that they get this information. Because again, communication is a two-way street. And so asking all of our families to please take the time to go ahead and sign up for all those things.
Has a message gone out already about that on the school website?
It went out, I sent out a message yesterday regarding that it was going to be coming and you'd need to re-register, and that we were going to be transitioning away from Feed Blitz. I was waiting, like I said, until the new site comes out.
I didn't get that, just so you know.
And that's one of the limitations, one of the reasons that we we're looking for something new, as Feed Blitz has been very temperamental and it hasn't been sending out to 100%. I'll send it out, I'll force a send out again tomorrow morning.
No,
Okay.
So I did get it, just so you know.
I did as
I-
well.
I
did too.
I
Get
didn't.
it, so.
It seems to be going out to about 350 out of our 562 subscribees, and I don't know why it doesn't push out to all, but
So that
more
will-
days and we won't be.
That
using
will
it anymore.
change too.
Yes.
So, okay, those, maybe it's the beginning of the alphabet or something.
Well, I'm just finally glad to have something that can be changed as we need it to change and not be stuck with
Right, pictures and information.
pictures and
telling you,
information that are dated and old and, hard to navigate, so, and this is very expandable, so I think it will be a real nice addition for our communications.
Will there be, and again, this is not so much with site design, again, it's more with
Yeah.
implementation. Will there be enforcement to ensure that certain things are being done? So to make sure, maybe sports teams are getting all the calendar items up and things like that, so.
Because we're using that distributed model, there is, so the athletic director at the high school is in charge of the athletic section, and the guidance counselors are in charge of the guidance section. So they're really able to put the information when they get their information. The finance department has access to the finance section, so they can post their documents if they want to. They don't need to wait for someone in the tech department to get it done for them.
But from an enforcement standpoint, someone's still looking over their shoulders, right?
Right,
Kinda say.
There's a sub-site director, so there's a building administrator in each building that's overseeing that. And in addition, Jeremy and I will be watching it, and I'll be paying attention to what's going on.
Great.
So again, the district emails won't change. So if people, like the names
Right.
will still,
Right.
if somebody needs to write.
Oh, no, there's been no
Those
change
don't
to our
change.
district email.
Board docs is not changing at all. That's still staying the same for the way
Correct.
people access board information and stuff. Okay. And the one thing I just want to say, it's having been just recently at the junior high and high school, it's really wonderful to go through those halls and see some of the pictures that are up and around and stuff. And so to be able to have the ability to share, even some of those is just fantastic. Because it's great, because when people walk around and you see those different pictures of the students doing different things, it's a great way to highlight some of the great things that are going on, so.
With the photo gallery on each one of the building's pages and the district's page, I think you'll see a lot more pictures being put up, and more frequently, having them changed several times a year as opposed to once every 5 years.
Thank you for that. Okay, so this is going live on
Thursday.
Congratulations, Nancy.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much
Thank
for all
you.
your hard work.
Thank you.
Parent-teacher conference.
Thanks, Nancy.
Carmen, I just have a quick comment or statement. I see we got our signage on the South School building.
Yes.
Did that just happen today?
Yes, it
I
did.
saw that
I was
going
gonna say, I
up.
drove by yesterday, I was gonna ask you, and I
And
see it
Nancy
now.
has that
Very
picture
nice.
up there
I saw
already.
that.
Just now, just on the website.
On the
yes.
website.
She's got the pictures up there already.
That's
That's
how I
how
do.
easy it is.
Saw that going up today, and
Oh, I missed that.
fantastic. Okay, then, thank you, Nancy, for that. Superintendent's report.
Okay, with regards to the EPERT update, I've included in the board book, we had board members indicate which of those programs they would like to be a part of, and so you can see where, what you had signed up for, and then also made an adjustment to facilitators, because there was some concern when it just says one group, if there isn't somebody maybe who is the lead person, so those are the initials that are there. And so this upcoming month, November, is going to be busy, because this is when we're going to start to reach out to parent groups and community and getting some of their input. So that'll be taking place during this month. And we have a admin meeting on Thursday, and so we'll be talking about what that process should look like, and so that everybody is following a similar process with that. In terms of communication, again, just a reminder that we have our open house at South on November 14th from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. And you should start seeing some announcements, and also the newspaper has agreed to publish some information about it, and I believe they're even going to do a little article about the open house, so that'll be upcoming. And then just an invitation to the board. Every November, we have a Thanksgiving luncheon at the high school. It's a tradition. And Steve Cashman, our architect, is sponsoring the luncheon. This year it'll be on Thursday, November 21st. And then there are 2 lunch periods, 11:30 and 12:25. If it fits your schedule and you think you can join us, if you could just let Judy McMahon know, and we'll make sure that we reserve a spot at a table for you. So that'll be upcoming. Then the last thing I have, we also have the joint annual conference coming up, and included in your folder, we have several invitations for various receptions. I do have a sign-up sheet that will be circulating, and if you could just indicate which of those events you would like to attend, and then Judy will RSVP on your behalf so that we can reserve a spot for you for that as well.
Kevin, is there anything, excuse me, is there anything you can add? Because I know today was, the SIP day was today the day that Rachel's Challenge came in and worked with the staff. Is there anything you can say about that?
Right, we did have Rachel's Challenge was introduced to the staff, and it was kind of a 2-phase presentation. The first part of it was talking about Rachel Scott and her story. She was a student at Columbine who was a victim of the shooting, but in the process of looking at her journals, she was a young lady who her goal in life was to improve the lives of others around her and to make sure that nobody ever felt isolated. And so she made it her charge to really reach out to people and make them feel a part of the school that she was in. And so, and then the second piece was more about as classroom teachers, the things that they can do within their classroom to help, create this chain reaction and what it looks like in a school when this takes root. And I know the feedback from staff, number one, was very emotional. Many people were touched by the presentation. It did cause people to kind of self-reflect on their own behaviors and some of the things that they would like to do differently. And the other message too that I think came through is that it's not just about addressing the bully, but it's also looking out for those individuals who possibly are targets and working with those individuals, and as a school community reaching out and making sure that those individuals again feel like they're a part of your school, and so it was definitely a great presentation. I think our staff they're very excited about it. Some of our staff members have visited other schools already. Some have already, because we've been talking about this, they took the time to go online and do a little research themselves. And so even prior to the speaker this morning, I had staff members approach me and telling me how excited they were. They've heard about it being implemented in other schools, what a positive impact. And so it really was a good day. And then we also have coming up then on November 19th, it's going to be the presentation for the communities at 7 o'clock at the high school. And so, and more information will be going out regarding that. And then we'll also have assemblies for our students as well to introduce the program. So,
excellent.
Thanks for the reminder.
Thank you.
Okay. This, I just gave, Jen Jonak sent this out, so this on his attachment, which was great, talking about, these 5 items. Dream big and believe in yourself, be kind to others, choose positive influences, show appreciation, and be the answer. That's pretty powerful stuff, so.
And that letter, just so you know, that is going out, each of the buildings.
Okay.
It's getting tweaked a little bit depending upon the grade level, but communication is going out to all the parents.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any public comments? Are there any board reports?
Yeah, I do want to say the play Saturday. We took the family and had a really good time. Alice in Wonderland / Aladdin, kind of a twofer. So we had fun with that, and also I was able to take part in the fall award ceremony at the high school last night. And I just want to say, I was amazed. I thought it was a fantastic turnout. I saw a lot of students and parents. I thought it was a really well-run event and enjoyable evening.
I will say the same thing, seeing that, the play, which was interesting. It was also nice to see new faces up there, in all elements of that. Some of those students have never done this before, so that was well done. And I was at the junior high awards piece like about a week ago, and there, just the spirit there is you can see that spirit changing, and it's wonderful to hear the students talk, and they're, I know that they've heard the song a million times, the Roar, Katy Perry's Roar, but it's really, it's a nice environment, and to hear the kids talk about the school spirit is fantastic, so. Anybody else? All right, then, we do not have a closed session tonight. So, wow, 8:05.
I don't think that's ever happened.
I don't know that that's ever happened. Thank you for that. Oh, we're going to make up for it?
We will have none of that.
You can clarify.
All right. Then, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.